Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is JGOD, and in today's video we're going to focus on the score streaks in Call of Duty Black Ops 4. There are 15 different score streaks in the game, and I would say that most of them are pretty straightforward, but there's a few of them that don't really come with much instruction. So in this video I'm going to go through all 15 streaks in order and give you some tips and tricks along the way so you can maximize each use. So if you're struggling to get a ton of use out of those lethal streaks, this is going to be the video for you. So the first score streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the Rcxd, which it says it's a remote controlled car strapped with explosives. And without that ComSec device, it's going to go ahead and cost you 450 score. With that ComSec device, it'll be 350. So when you actually call on that Rcxd, you're going to get a little menu at the bottom right here. It gives you a couple different options. One is to use a speed boost, which is basically your sprint option, and then you have a jump option. So right here I'm just kind of messing around with it. It does last approximately 40 seconds, which is a considerable amount of time. Obviously, since the Rcxd isn't one of those top tier streaks in the game, it is very vulnerable to damage. Pretty much you get shot once, it will explode. So just be careful how you use it. The next streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the Dart. And for right here, it says pilot an anti-personnel drone, remote detonate the drone with R2 or detonate on impact. This one will go ahead and cost you 500 without that ComSec device and 400 with it. The biggest problem with this score streak is it's very hard to maneuver if you don't have a lot of practice with it. You can see on the screen right here, you hold down that left trigger, you'll be able to slow down the object. And when you do that, you can actually get considerable maneuverability, line up the shot, and basically treat it like an aerial Rcxd. And the total timer on this one is approximately 30 seconds. So let's go ahead and talk about the next score streak on the list, and that is the UAV, and it says reveal enemy positions through the fog of war. This one's gonna go ahead and cost you 550 without that ComSec device and 450 with. There's not much you really need to know about the UAV other than it cycles every 5 seconds and lasts approximately 30 seconds. The next streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the care package, and this one costs you 600 without that ComSec device, 500 with, and the description says it'll call in an airdrop for a random streak. And for this score streak, you're going to want to make sure that you're outside, so obviously it'll drop, and it takes approximately 12 seconds from the time you throw it for it to actually come out of the sky and hit the ground. This is actually a great score streak to have for brand new players because it gives you a chance to experience those higher tier streaks, which we'll talk about later on in this video. The next streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the counter UAV, and this one's pretty low cost as well at 650 and then 550 with the ComSec device. It says it will scramble the enemy's minimap. Personally, this one is probably not even worth using because it does not work and it doesn't last very long. And the main reason I'm saying it doesn't work is because when you actually see it get scrambled right here, I still have that acoustic sensor on, so when I jump out this window, you'll be able to see directionally where enemies are, and that defeats one of the main purposes of even running a counter UAV. And the other reason I mentioned that it's not that good is because it doesn't last that long. It only lasts approximately 20 seconds, which is shorter than a UAV, and overall it just doesn't seem that worth it to me. Now let's move on to a streak that I think is probably one of the best in the game, and that is the Hailstorm. And the description reads, control a Hailstorm missile while manually triggered cluster bombs that track enemy targets. So the description tells you right there that it's a two-phase lethal attack, and this one's going to cost you 850 without that ComSec device and 700 with. So for this one I'm going to slow it down quite a bit. You're going to see me actually calling this streak, and that first phase, what you do is you want to get as many enemies in these white squares as possible and then pull that right trigger. So right here you can see I have a couple lined up. I end up getting 3, 4, and it ends up lining them all up. You can see when I'm going to get those targets in my sights. And then I go ahead and activate those cluster bombs with that right trigger, and then I direct my individual missile to the rest of the enemies, which are a little bit further off the map, and I go ahead and take those guys out, and I get a total of 5 kills with 1 Hailstorm. And right after this one, I ended up calling in another one, and this is going to be in real time, so you can see exactly how fast you got to move. I go ahead and line up the targets. Obviously they're bots, so they lined up for me. Then I use the individual missile for cleanup. So ideally you're going to want to get as many people as you can with the cluster as high as possible, and then pretty much transition into the closest possible with that individual missile. The next trick we'll go ahead and talk about is the lightning strike, and this one says launch a targeted airstrike on 3 locations, cost 900 without the ComSec device and 700 with. And the only real recommendation I have for this one is leading your target just a little bit, because the enemies will be running and there is a slight delay from when you actually call them in to actually when it lands. The next score streak on the list is the sentry, and it says deploy a deadly automated turret that targets enemy players, vehicles, and equipment. This one will cost you 950 without that ComSec device and 750 with. The only recommendations I really have for this one is set up in a high traffic area where your team is nearby so it cannot get destroyed right away. because if it doesn't get destroyed, it'll last approximately 60 seconds. Also keep in mind that it does rotate 360 degrees, so no matter which direction you face it, it will turn to target enemy players. The next score streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the drone squad, and this one says call in a squadron of automated drones outfitted with machine gun turrets. Again, this one will cost you 1,000 without that ComSec device and 800 with. So as far as using this one goes, there's no real advice. Pretty much they'll follow you around. So if you want to play aggressive in open areas where you know enemies will be, they will shoot enemies in the area, which will kind of cover your back a little bit, but I wouldn't 100% rely on them because their target acquisition is not the best, especially if someone's using cold-blooded. So the next score streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the Mantis, and it's described as being a heavily armored quadrupedal combat robot, can be remote controlled. This one is a little bit pricey at 1,050 score without that ComSec device and 850 with. And the Mantis is kind of one of those streaks that is very inconsistent in my opinion. I think when it's on autopilot, it's not very strong unless it just happens to be in the right area. And obviously if you take it over, it is a little bit restrictive on the shots you can fire. They made it so it definitely is not overpowered. You can see you only get 4 bullets and you can't automatically spam them to reload. They will not reload until you fired all 3 of those shots. So pretty much I'm coming around the corner, I'm trying to peek these guys on the bridge. You're going to see me take them out in one shot. You can line up a shot and get a nasty kill, which you saw right there. And as I come around the corner, I can't reload these other 2 shots that are missing even with all this time. So it might have been more advantageous to fire them off. You can see that the range is pretty good. And then right there I missed just because I was a little too high. And then right now you can see I'm all staticking, and that happens when an enemy gets a close miss with a rocket launcher. And if you look closely on the bottom right, as I take damage, that little Mantis image will fill up with yellow from left to right. So that's technically its health bar. You can see I took a little bit of damage, so it filled up that little left leg. And then that bar at the bottom is the timer for how long it lasts, and this one lasts approximately 90 seconds. The next score streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the Sniper's Nest, and it says that when you call it in, you'll call in the support of 2 heli snipers. This one costs 1,100 without that ComSec device and 900 with. This streak actually was one of the streaks that got a little bit of a buff in one of the last updates, and basically they made it so that those snipers fire just a little bit faster and the streak lasts a little bit longer. When I did my testing, it lasted approximately 90 seconds. Kind of hard to compare how fast it's shooting because I think it really depends on how many targets there are. One of the downsides with running this streak is it'll make it so you can't actually call in your attack helicopter. So if you're really streaking, you're going to cycle through your streaks and you're probably going to miss out on one of your streaks. So I wouldn't probably run those both together because it just delays that time it's going to take for you to actually call in that secondary streak. And the next score streak we'll go ahead and talk about is the attack chopper, which is actually one of my favorites. It says call in a support helicopter. This one costs you 1,200 score without that ComSec device, 950 with. And there's not really much you need to know about the attack chopper other than it lasts approximately 75 seconds. So keep in mind when you want to call it in at the end of the round that you're not wasting too much of that time, and that should maximize the kills you get from this streak. We still have 3 score streaks left and plenty of tips. We're going to talk about the Thresher next, and this one is described as an AI piloted strafe run that lays heavy machine gun and rocket fire. Will cost you 1,250 score without that ComSec device and 1,000 with. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of this particular score streak. All it pretty much does is when you call it in, it'll start to do flybys over the map, and it does 6 separate flybys with approximately 12 seconds in between them. So it's approximately 1 minute between that first flyby and the last. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the second to last score streak, and that is the strike team. This one's going to cost you 1,350 without that ComSec device and 1,050 with. This says it drops 2 elite armored soldiers that'll drop in from a chopper to clear a position, command them to move by holding square. Let's go ahead and first start off with how long the strike team lasts. And the first thing you're going to want to know, it lasts approximately 90 seconds, but you lose approximately 20 seconds from them just jumping out of the helicopter. So overall, they'll be on the ground for approximately 70 seconds. I see a lot of players struggle with how to use this one properly, and the main reason is because the actual descriptors that are used when you actually press that square button are not very accurate in my opinion. When you press square to send the strike team to a specific location, they will literally go to that location and just stand there. They don't do a very good job of being mobile, looking around, trying to see who's in the area so they can pick up some kills. So typically what you're going to want to do is send your strike team to a specific area in case you want to lock down a specific spawn. Once they get to that area, then you go ahead and press square again to rally, and that'll force them to patrol. It should say patrol strike team because technically rally would be rally on you, but it doesn't really work out that way. They just patrol the map once you've selected rally. So while the strike team's on the ground for that approximate 70 seconds, you're going to kind of want to direct them and kind of treat them like an animal, a little pet. You're going to tell them, go here, then patrol. Go here, then patrol. And that's pretty much what you're going to do every time you call them in. The final score streak we'll talk about is the gunship, and this one says to be the gunner in a close air support gunship. This one will cost you a whopping 1600 score without that comsec device and 1350 width. This streak lasts approximately 60 seconds, and the key to being successful with this one is cycling through your ammo. Pretty much use your ammo, switch to the next set of ammo, cycle through, next ammo, and pretty much continue. By the time you cycle through, you should get a reload on the next set of ammo. With the machine gun, you'll have to lead your shot. With the other ammo, you don't really have to lead too much. Pretty much wherever you hit, it's pretty much going to kill them because the blast radius is huge. But with that minigun, you're definitely going to want to lead the shot a little bit. So if you see them running from right to left, shoot a little bit further to the left, and that'll allow you to get some easy kills. And that pretty much wraps up the video. If you did enjoy the video in any way or found any of the tips helpful when it comes to the score streaks in Call of Duty Black Ops 4, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. I usually put out Call of Duty content related to news, in-game updates, best class setups, subscriber breakdowns, as well as other tip and trick videos like the one you saw today on how to improve at Call of Duty. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, have a great day.